Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cinema.Engineering podcast. We're going to talk about issues around home cinema from, guess what, an engineering perspective. How to make the rooms better, how to apply science to this sort of thing, and really take it away from kind of mythology and brand loyalty. Lots to discuss. We've got a panel of 3 experts and 1 me. First on our panel, I'm going to introduce Ben Goff, Cinema Lusso. Ben is the guy who basically explains stuff to me on the quiet when I get stuck, which is often. We first got chatting when Ben was preparing his first inaugural CEDIA award entry. I watched him go into an absolute panicky state, and on the morning of the awards, he totally wrote off any chance of ever winning one. And he was right, because he won 2, didn't he? So not only best cinema in his category, but also best lighting. So yeah, he's I would say he's been a good friend to me, but I consider him frankly one of my enemies because he's better at this stuff than me.
I mean, nice of you to say, but you're downplaying this. So in return, if we look at Owen's achievements, Owen was the key writer from CEDIA. So CEDIA are our governing body, who is the industry body that we all belong to. Owen created pretty much single-handedly the CPD. So that when we are training architects, when we're outreach for architects, Owen wrote the course on how do we teach architects to build cinemas. So he can downplay his achievements all he wants, but he is an award winner himself, 3 years on the awards judging panel, and he created the CPD. So, yeah, you know enough.
Go on, Christian, you can do me.
Well, I think I'm probably the least qualified already here, and to speak about someone like Peter and introduce him to the group and to everybody who's listening is a monumental task, because Peter is a globally respected residential technology expert. He's been in the industry for close on 30 years, if I'm not mistaken, Peter.
You've 32 now.
32. Your Instagram handle is Get More Gadgets, and I guess that really sums him up. He is a valued volunteer for CEDIA. He worked for CEDIA at one stage. He wrote the book on a lot of things. He's currently the R10 chair, which is in charge of writing the new standards and overhauling the old standards. And he cracks the whip when it comes to running those calls. He is CEDIA certified. He's a designer. He's a network specialist. He's done the whole ISF and HAA thing, and he just likes technology. And above all, he makes sure that we're all focusing on the specification and engineering aspects of it more than the BS type sales aspects. And I think, to have someone like him on the call with us on a regular basis is going to allow us to explore fascinating topics and discussions over the coming months.
Thanks, mate. Christian, what to say about you? Well, I've known you for a long time. When I first met you, you had hair. That's how long I've known you. Christian has an amazing distribution company based in South Africa called Sphere Custom. He also has a UK-based company called Twisted Pair. The facility that Christian has in Cape Town for his distribution company, I would say, is probably the best demonstration facility I've ever been to in the world. It looks staggering. It's been built really, really well. What I really love about Christian is he's one of the few people in our world building these performance entertainment spaces that is really, 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 really good on the aesthetic design and how to build it parts. Christian's sketches are, freehand sketches are absolutely legendary. I've watched Christian in client meetings basically just sketch out almost render quality. This is what your room's going to look like, Mr. Customer. And that's a sign of someone who deeply understands what we do all the way through the project process. And when I say project process, I think one of the most important parts of it is what we call discovery. Talking to a client or potential clients, and just digging into what their needs are. I've run quite a few design thinking classes with an amazing industry friend of ours, Rich Green. Christian's been helping out with those for many, many years. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing this with Christiaan, doing this with Owen, doing this with Ben. Exactly as Owen said, let's get rid of the myths. Let's get some engineering and science back into things. So, guys, why are we here? What's this Cinema.Engineering podcast all about? Who wants to kick off?
I mean, I think it feels like it's slightly reactionary of where our industry's gone. We, all four of us, as Christiaan said, you chair the R10, but all four of us are on R10 standards calls, and we know how things should be done, and we're watching the rest of our industry not do them. I think there's just a bit, I think, of, it's not necessarily an education, but it's pointing out where things can be better. We're well aware of where things can be better. We see the standards, but it's time this industry stops being the Wild West. Smart home is still there. Smart home is absolutely, from my point of view, the Wild West. There is no standards. Everything is just done as every firm wants. But cinema doesn't need to be that way. We've got commercial standards that we can work to. We've got agreed industry consensus of how a cinema should be built, and it's kind of time to highlight that's the way it should be done.
I think if I were to sum up what I want the industry to be and where I'd like the industry to go, is currently, if you look at Facebook, you look at LinkedIn, you look at Instagram, you look at Twitter, you look at every single social media platform, there's 1,047 and their mates companies all posting photos of rooms saying, isn't this room great? And I look at all these photos and I think, I have absolutely no idea how great it is. It might not even work. There might not actually be any speakers installed. It's just a pretty looking room. And
sometimes you even know it's wrong.
Absolutely.
Just by looking at the picture.
And my challenge to the industry, and I think this is going to be a huge part of what we're going to talk about, is when you say that's a great room, justify it. Don't just post us photos, post us some specifications. And when I say specifications, I don't mean a list of equipment. I mean, tell me how that room performs. Give me the measurements. And I think once our industry starts to do that, then we start becoming actual professionals.
Yeah, I remember being, not engaged on a job. It was one of those jobs I was delighted to lose just shortly after I'd moved to Bristol. And the guy had gone and prepared some 3D renders for himself about what he wanted to be. And on the side walls, he'd had some lovely stretched frames created in cloth. And I said, what are those for? What are we doing under there? Is there speakers? Is there perhaps some acoustic treatment? He said, no. I just had those done by a local sort of fabricator lady because they look the part. It makes it look a bit studio-esque. And they were literally there to conceal absolutely nothing. Because someone got the idea this is how a home cinema type scenario ought to look. And not perhaps the penny hadn't dropped that we only do that to hide stuff. We do that to hide treatment panels because they're often not pretty. We do that to hide loudspeakers because guess what? Seeing a loudspeaker doesn't really enhance the immersive effect. But no, we had all the lovely cloth panel there just done as on the surface. And that's one of the problems, I think, is a sort of a surface cinema where, it might measure well, it might measure badly, and actually look at the room and you can already tell that for at least half the people in there, it's going to be quite bad.
I think one of the important aspects that we have come across and come up against in this industry is commoditization. Products are becoming cheaper, they're becoming better, they're becoming, until recently, easier to get hold of. And with that, we have within our industry, which is somewhat unregulated, we've come up against the battle or the continual battle whereby we need to differentiate ourselves. And a lot of the integrators and installers have cottoned on to home cinema being that pinnacle of this is how we're different because we do beautiful home cinemas. But a beautiful home cinema that isn't functional, or a beautiful home cinema that isn't user-friendly, or that isn't performing to a level which is respected, measurable, or understood and achieved, isn't going to deliver that experience. And while we can commoditize the products all we want, one of the things that we're leaving behind is effectively our education level and our understanding of what it takes to get from A to B. I guess that's part and parcel of why we want to talk about these topics on this podcast. We want to discuss why acoustic treatment is important within a room, and we want to give the scientific reasons and the measured responses of that room as practical examples. Stretch fabric is easier to get hold of, and there are loads of companies doing it. Yet, without any engineering behind that, stretch fabric on a wall is pointless. It absorbs some high frequencies. That's about it. But there needs to be a purpose to everything that we do in this process. Peter very kindly mentioned sketching by hand, and I've got big shoes to fill apparently. But that's the essence of it. If you understand the process of A through Z, and you can implement those in a fashion that is technically accurate, you can have a repeatable delivery mechanism for a customer experience. And that is what I think this is all about.
Yeah, I mean, repeatable is a key there. It's all of our clients have got a different situation. Their needs are slightly different. Their rooms will definitely be different. And when we're guessing, it's impossible to show a client what they're really buying. You know, I can take them to a demo facility and play them a system, put that exact same system in their room, which is 3 times bigger, and the effect is irrelevant. It's just not the same. So that engineering concept of repeatability, I can show them a system, I can deliver them something which measures the same. So it's objectively the same experience. It doesn't matter if the room's bigger or smaller. They can get the same experience. And for a sales process, that's huge for us. For the first time, really, we can, with a huge list of criteria, say, this is what you saw and heard in that room. This is what we'll provide you. So the product is, that product doesn't really matter, because it's very, very rare that you're ever going to show a client the system that's right for them. So, yeah, I think repeatability is more important than anything else, to always deliver that same end result, irrelevant of what it took to get there in that particular job.
Someone who I follow on the internet is a lady called Poppy Crumb. And Poppy had, I think, the coolest job title ever. She's moved on now, but she used to be chief scientist at Dolby Laboratories. And Poppy Crumb is a neuroscientist. And, that just goes to the kind of stuff that's probably going on in Dolby at the moment. And Poppy's research was all about how can you measure emotion. And once you've measured the emotion, once you've detected the emotion of someone, then what you can do about it. Anyway, in a fantastic podcast that Poppy did last year ahead of her keynote at the CEDIA Expo, she said the most wonderful quote, which was, "Standards ensure consistency of experience." And I think that's what we as a group are really going to be about. That's what the 4 of us are really, really going to focus on. How can standards, how can engineering, how can science, how can objectivity help you? And you might be an industry person, you might be a hobbyist, you might be an end user just figuring out, how do I spend my money on one of these entertainment spaces? But what we're really going to focus in on is using engineering standards. And there's very, very few bad products on the market. There's a few. There are some poorly engineered products. But ironically, those poorly engineered products in certain rooms can perform really well. Let's say you have a loudspeaker that has some kind of design flaw in it. Well, the reality with a loudspeaker is you never listen to just the loudspeaker. You listen to the loudspeaker in a room. And it's entirely possible that you can put a poor loudspeaker into a room, and the way that room is behaving is kind of masking the poorness. It's kind of enhancing the good bits and not exaggerating the poorness. So if you just go and listen to a pair of speakers in a room and they sound wonderful, you haven't judged that they're wonderful speakers. You've just judged that those speakers used in that way, driven with those bits of components in front of them, amplifiers and source components, and specifically in that room with that room's unique acoustics, you like the sound. But to us as cinema engineers, that's not good enough, because exactly as Ben says, for my customers, I can never demonstrate the exact room that customer's going to buy, because every single project we do, in effect, is an alpha test. Everything we build, it's not even beta testing it, it's alpha testing it. We've never made it before. And that's the nature of custom. We've never done it before. It's unique to the client. So we have to use engineering. We have to use standards to ensure the consistency of experience from customer to customer. And something else that really troubles me that I see online, you go to a lot of internet forums, and one of the most common questions is, what speaker should I buy? And the answer is always, I don't have enough information on which to base a decent answer for you. I need to know a lot more. But oh no, the answers come flooding in. You want to buy this brand, you want to buy that brand, you want to buy the other brand. And it's total, utter nonsense. Those are all good speakers, but again, there are very, very few bad products, but there are a huge amount of excellent products used very, very, very poorly, used within a system that they're just not designed to work in that way. So that's another thing we're going to be talking about. We're going to be relating engineering and standards and science to how to choose the best products, and that's not going to be based on brand. And excuse me guys, I know I'm rambling on. I just want to say one more thing. As a group, we've decided on two red lines for this podcast. Number one, we're never going to accept advertising from anyone, and number two, we're never going to be sponsored. Because I'm sorry, if you have advertisers, or if you're sponsored, and that sponsored guest, the guest who appears on your show, has paid to be there, that's not unbiased. That's not objective. So we are never ever going to do that. On our website, we will have a list of interests. You know, we will list the suppliers that I guess we work very, very close with, just to be very, very transparent about what relationships we might have. But what we're here is not to talk about our mates, is not to talk about what we like or what we don't like. It's to talk about objective engineering.
Brilliant. And because all that's super excellent, I couldn't agree more about the stuff around shilling, I guess, you know, the kind of, someone's paying to sponsor this thing, and it's brilliant for us because we've got all our costs paid for. But
what can you buy with a shilling these days, Owen? Nothing. Nothing costs a shilling these days.
What can I say? I'm very, very old.
Are you from the 1950s or something?
Oh, don't come that tone with me, sonny.
All right. I'm an English geezer. I'll pay you a shilling for that.
Save the topic for next time. Come on, boys. Save the topic for next time.
Moving on. I'm quite pleased to be the first person to set off the bell and actually quote Floyd Toole in this, or at least quote Floyd Toole's work. The good news, because if you're not kind of versed in industry stuff, and if you haven't sort of studied it to a bit of a level, you might think, okay, so it's not measuring accurately. Well, so what? Well, good news for us, bad news on that idea. And it's this. In that book that Christiaan is helpfully holding up for us, Floyd points out that they got a load of normal people in a room and played them a load of stuff. And the load of stuff that measured more accurately was absolutely, unanimously and consistently preferred by normal people. So that's what we do here. You know, we play people stuff. I'm just frantically scanning the room for my copy of his book.
For your copy.
It's taken me ages to find mine. Right, so mine's nearly here. My old version, because I have a Kindle old version, and it's probably on a page where I've been helping Owen with something, if we're honest.
Get up to date.
I've still got my first edition somewhere, which I've kept because it was given to me and signed by the author himself. So that's a prized possession.
I think just, Peter, touching on the points that you and Owen raised, and I think it's an apt analogy, but I think our industry is very much like cooking. And it's very much like MasterChef. We've all sat down every week, watch, rinse and repeat. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, Australia, the US, Hell's Kitchen, all of those sort of programs revolve around delivering good food. And one of the things that is absolutely critical and key in the restaurant industry is repeatability of experience. If a punter comes in and pays for a meal and it's exquisite, he will come back every single time. They'll eat something different maybe, but they will eat the same thing over and over and over again on multiple different occasions, and it will be the same. It'll give them the same beautiful experience. Now, yes, there's flair, yes, there's education, yes, there's experience in cooking and becoming a chef. You don't study at Le Cordon Bleu for nothing. But you give 3 chefs the same ingredients and you're going to get 3 different meals. You give those 3 chefs the same ingredients and you put them in front of a test and you say to them, make me a poached egg in 3.5 minutes. That critical test is there to test your skills, not necessarily about the ingredients. And what we're doing as an industry is we're just punting the ingredients to clients. We're saying that these are the best ingredients you need, without focusing on the actual skill and the education and the experience necessary to gel them together to deliver that repeatable experience.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Few people go to a restaurant because of the raw ingredients they use. The most people will go to a restaurant because of the chef. And it should be exactly the same in our industry. But yet our industry seems to be obsessed with product. What is the best product? Very, very few people talk about the best end result. And when they do talk about the best end result, they'll go, oh yeah, it's brilliant. And everyone go, great, it's brilliant. But what gives that person the right to say it's brilliant? I'm going to give you you're going to get a lot of car analogies from me on this podcast. So I'm going to give you Peter in the Art of Zen and car analogies, number 1. And that is, if the only car you've ever driven is a little Hyundai i10, it is the best car in the world. It's reliable. It's reasonably refined. It's as fast as anything out there on the road because you can only drive as fast as the car in front. It's quite refined. It's reasonably spacious. It's all the car anyone reasonably ever needs to get from A to B. So if that's the only car you've ever driven, it's the best car in the world. If that individual then drives, let's say, a BMW 5 Series, all of a sudden their perspectives change. So if they've only ever driven a Hyundai i10, I'm sorry, that person is not qualified to judge more expensive and better cars. The second they drive a BMW, they're going to go, oh my God, this is incredible. This is now the best car in the world. But if I let them drive that BMW 5 Series and a Mercedes E-Class and an Audi A6, you can't criticize the engineering of any of them. I mean, the engineering is brilliant, but the designer, in other words, the chef, has used pretty similar raw ingredients, sort of fuel injection systems and cylinders and pistons and oil and sort of electrical communication stuff, pretty similar stuff to build something completely different. And I bet that person who a day ago had only ever driven a Hyundai i10 will drive the 5 Series, the E-Class and the A6, and they'll have a preference. And then they'll be qualified at that level. I then put them into a Ferrari. Oh, well, the perspective changes. But is that Ferrari a better car? No, it's not better. Actually, Ferraris are complete crap. I can't go camping in a Ferrari. I wouldn't want to go to Asda in a Ferrari. I couldn't pick my kids and their friends up from school in a mid-engine Ferrari. So it's completely wrong for me. And going back to what we were talking about earlier about discovery, part of that discovery process is to find out how people use rooms, what people need, how they play, how they work to come up with the best thing for them. So no, I'm sorry, there is no such thing as the best car. There's no such thing as the best speaker. There's no such thing as the best amp. There's no such thing as the best projector. There is the right product for that particular system, given all of the things that need to be known for the designer, in other words, the chef, to then choose the right raw ingredients to deliver that experience for the end user. So That was car analogy number one.
So it's interesting. I'd maybe have a slightly different take on some of that. So when you say there's no right product to, or you're looking at making something right, but we can't always achieve that. We can't always get right. The client may want a car that does 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds, and they want a seat 10. One doesn't exist. You can have a 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds, or you can have a people carrier. So
But you can strap a rocket engine onto it.
Right. Okay. But
You could just have
the
very,
thing I
very
think
small passengers.
so. What I think is really key for us to understand is that we balance compromise. Like, these rooms will always be compromised. There is almost no such thing as a perfect room, and I know it's theoretically possible. I've never met a client who would want a perfect room. So to get the very best video performance from a projector, let's say we need a pitch black room. None of my clients want black walls. I know people in the industry who admit they never use their cinemas because they made them perfect. But then no one wants to go in the room because it's a really awful place to spend time. So we're balancing compromises. It needs to be comfortable. It needs to be enjoyable. It has to have performance. But there isn't right and wrong, doesn't really exist. We have a target, but the client's going to have a budget. The budget may be the compromise. It may be the shape of the room, the size of the room. We may not be able to change everything. And it's easy to say that engineering will let us make things right, but sometimes it just lets us minimize what's wrong.
I'm going to challenge you on the perfect customer. I think every customer wants the perfect cinema, but they don't always have the perfect budget. They don't always have the perfect means to get to that result. They don't always have the perfect understanding of what goes into getting to that result. To get back to the food analogy, if you go to a Michelin star restaurant and you really thoroughly enjoy the meal, it does not necessarily mean you can't recreate that meal at home. It just means you're going to have to practice a little bit harder for a little bit longer to do so. And you might need to step outside of your comfort zone with where you buy your ingredients from. And you'd have to assess your supply chain, and you have to look at all of those sort of factors. To touch on the point that Peter raised as well, about the requirements and the functionality behind the vehicle or the car, or in this case, the cinema. We often fall into the trap as an industry of not keeping quiet enough, not listening, thinking, and responding in equal measure. Rather just going, right, we need to get this done. We need to get the client happy. But actually, perspective is what we need in order to deliver that, and to deliver it scientifically and accurately and objectively. We come across this all the time, where an architect, and Owen, you'll probably get this question on many of your CPD discussions. An architect will give you a list, and that list will have a number of parts on it. Very similar to someone potentially getting hold of a list of engine components. And those engine components came out of a BMW. And they go to 6 different suppliers and they go, I need these components, or I need these components and or similar. So if there's a line item here that you don't like, either the price of, or you can't get it, replace it with something equivalent. I can pretty much guarantee that if you've stripped down that BMW engine and you've replaced 6 components with components that came from Mercedes, well, it's probably not going to work. Even if you replace one of those components, it's probably not going to work. And that's a very important part of this. We need to create harmony throughout that process from beginning to end. And we do that from an engineering perspective. We do that by understanding and knowing the products that we use. And it comes up very often in client discussions, but I like these products. Fantastic. We can consider them at a later point. I guess my biggest bugbear is that as an industry, we don't have, I think, the backbone to stand up to customers to say, we're not saying that you're incorrect or that you're wrong. We're saying that there's an actual thought process to this, and the thought process and the engineering and the objective way of considering what we put together in a recipe, which delivers your experience, is something that you need to be reasonable about and understand that there may be changes to that preferred brand, to that specific product that you want. There is nothing to say that if they like that product, we can't use it. There may be compromise. And as Peter has said on multiple talks that he's given and multiple sessions that we've taught together, it's about balance of compromise.
A great industry friend of most of us, Sam Woodward, he taught me an amazing phrase, which is you don't tell someone they're wrong. You know, if someone tells you something that quite frankly is a pile of shit, my favorite phrase is, yeah, that's a common misconception, because that's the reality of our industry. It is full of misconceptions, urban myths, and quite frankly, lies put out by manufacturers that want to tell their version of the story. And what we'd like to do in this podcast is not tell any specific manufacturer's story, but tell the engineering story. We're going to be talking science. We're going to be talking physics. We're going to be talking the stuff that every manufacturer has to use. But all the different manufacturers have exactly as Christiaan was saying, a different balance of compromises. It's impossible to make the perfect loudspeaker. Literally impossible to make the perfect loudspeaker. As you make one aspect of it better, you're probably making another aspect of it worse. And the most common worse aspect is cost. And exactly as Ben was saying, that the biggest compromise that all of us have to deal with day to day is how much have we got to spend to accomplish this? And the other massive compromise we always have to accept is, and what is the space we're trying to do it in? Because you just can't fit 16 people into a 3x4 room. Sorry, you can't. So I never ask someone, how many seats would you like? I'll talk about the room, and then I'll tell someone what the different seating options are. So yeah, all about compromise.
Yeah. And I mean, I think when you look at problem jobs, which I think we do quite a lot, or we look at someone go, look at my lovely design. And, you know, just this morning I was talking to Ben online, and we were like, this is plunderous, because there's actually nobody in the good seat. You know, there's a really good seat down the middle of an entertainment space in front of the screen. It's just fantastic. It's more balanced than any of the others. So to have nobody there, massive, huge blunder. But we both concluded, I think, quite clearly they tried to put someone in the good seat, and then they were vetoed by the client, who said, no, it'll feel nicer as a room if we have a lovely gangway like it's an airplane. It's like, this is where you need to be able to show people stuff, because it's not their fault. You know, people get overridden by clients, and it's our fault for not telling the story correctly. Definitely. I think that's a problem. And it's also their fault for engaging professionals and not listening to them.
It's also our fault for not getting the client to sign the piece of paper that says, I accept that compromise. Because 6 to 8 months down the line, the client goes, I'm really not enjoying my cinema. And you can turn to him and say, well, if only you move your seat 3 feet to the left,
like we said,
you'd have a much better experience. We're
going to dig into seating in a later episode. For now, guys, I'm gonna put you on the spot before we wrap up. What's the number one thing that each of you wants to accomplish with this podcast series? Why are you here? What's your reason for doing this? What do you want to do?
I'd like to get my industry peers to take some training.
Okay.
I'd like to get an awareness of design out there. There are far too many integrators who completely underestimate the power of design and the ability for them to do a little bit of design work that will save them a lot in the long run.
You've just described a brilliant episode, Christiaan. I think we need to do an episode that's entitled "What's the difference between design and engineering?" Because they are different, and that'll be a great one to talk about. What about you, Ben?
So, just because they've already gone through the others, I'm going to say that the goal is to force the hand of some manufacturers down the line. If we can educate our industry that engineering is possible, we can show them what they need to do it. And it's really difficult. Right now, there is just not enough data from manufacturers. So we have distributors and manufacturers giving us data in whatever fashion they want, however they feel like it. It's not comparable. It's predominantly not useful. If we look at speakers, I can think of less than 5 brands globally that give me actually proper, real, comparable, valuable data. So your question earlier of, which speaker should I buy? Well, for 95% of speaker brands out there, it's kind of impossible to know. We really don't actually know what those speakers do. So as we educate on that engineering side, let's force the hand of the manufacturers to come with us.
Yeah.
And I think over the next couple of months, we're going to be doing this in various formats as well. We will have a 20 to 30 minute open discussion, very similar to what we've had now, focusing on those topics that we've mentioned. We're going to do a 5-minute Mythbuster that is going to bring topics that are front and foremost on Facebook, on social media, questions that people raise. We'll bring in some people, we'll interview some people, we'll chat to some industry legends and designers and industry people who have the inside scoop. And on the odd occasion, when there is a big event or one of us is attending a trade show, we'll drag some camera gear along and we'll run through those trade shows and put some stuff together. And then we're going to do my favorite, I think, or everybody's favorite on this call so far, the Negroni sessions, which will be a every now and then session where we'll get down and dirty with some of the stuff.
And our best Negroni recipes.
Absolutely.
I've heard a vicious rumour there's a recommended practice for Negronis.
There will be. I'm pushing for a CTA CDR R10 recommended practice for Negronis. It's important because I'm very objective in saying this, and I am right, and I challenge anyone to prove me wrong. But the Negroni is the finest cocktail ever invented by humanity. And Christian will pump up and say, "Oh, it's not a cocktail; it's an aperitif." But no, sorry, it's a cocktail that is drunk as an aperitif. But we hope you've enjoyed today. Hope it serves as a good introduction to what we're going to be doing in the future. We'd love to hear from you. If there's any topics you want us to discuss, our contact details are going to be down below. If there's any Mythbusters you want to do, please let us know. We're hoping to get one thing out every week. Please bear with us. If we don't, then we're busy with actual clients and actual money-making work. But if you've got any ideas, you want to talk to us individually, then all of our contact details are below. Hope you've enjoyed today, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.
Adios, amigos.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Try and sync them up.